In this video, we're going to discuss the concept of fair use for copyright. We often think about copyright law as granting important rights to the creators of original expression, but the Copyright Act also grants important rights to the public at large. Just one of those rights that's granted to the public is the right of fair use. This is covered in Section 107 of the Copyright Act. One preliminary point: merely disclaiming that you're not the owner of the copyrights in a work does not allow you necessarily to use that work, or merely attributing the work to the original author or the rights holder doesn't make it okay to use that work. Including a disclaimer or proper attribution may be a factor in considering whether your use is fair, but by itself alone it doesn't give you rights to necessarily use that work. Let's talk more specifically about how we figure out whether a use is fair. Copyright law gives us 4 factors to considering when determining whether a use of someone else's copyrighted content is fair. The first factor is the purpose and character of your use. There's 2 prongs to this factor. The first is whether the nature of your use is commercial or educational. If you're using it for educational purposes, this would tend to more likely be a fair use. Courts also would look at how transformative your use is. In other words, are you using the work for a different purpose than it was originally created for? The second factor is the nature of the original work, including, is it creative or is it non-fictional? Has it already been published? In general, creative works that have not yet been published are less likely to be able to be used in a fair manner. It's going to be harder to use those works without the permission of the rights holder. The third factor is the amount and substantiality of the portion of the work of which you're using. Generally, the less of a work you use, the more likely it is to be fair. But there's no rigid rule here. We can't say, oh, you can use 100 words of a book and it's definitely going to be fair, or you can use 20 seconds of a song and it's definitely going to be fair. It depends upon the importance of that work, of the amount you're using to the work as a whole. It also depends upon whether you're using just the amount of the original work that you absolutely have to use, or whether you're using more than you need to use for your intended fair use. And the fourth factor is the impact on the market for the original work and potential derivatives thereof. So is your purported fair use harming the market that the rights holder is seeking or potentially could seek to exploit? Let's take an example. There's a famous case called Kelly v. Reba. Kelly was a photographer who had a website with photographs on it. And Reba, who had changed its name during the lawsuit, originally it was ditto.com, had a website that was running a search engine. They had indexed Kelly's website, and the search results on ditto.com were thumbnail prints of portions of Kelly's website, including photographs. Kelly sued for infringement, and Ditto said this is fair use. And the court agreed that this is fair use. Going through the 4 factors, the court said that while Ditto's website was for commercial purposes, it wasn't directly exploiting the photographs themselves. Also, it found Ditto's use of the original photographs highly transformative. In other words, it was using these thumbnails to operate a search engine to help users find Kelly's website. This was different than Kelly's originally intended use of the photographs themselves to express creative content. Looking at the second factor, the nature of the original use, the court found that this favored Kelly, but only slightly, because while these are creative works, they had already been published. Looking at the third factor, the court found that while ditto.com was using the entire photograph, these were only thumbnail prints, they were of lesser quality, and Ditto wasn't using any more of the original work than they needed to implement their transformative use. And looking at the fourth factor, whether it harmed Kelly's market, the court found that there was virtually no harm to the original market for these photographs. Again, because these are thumbnail prints of lesser quality, no one is going to print or download these thumbnail prints instead of purchasing one of Kelly's photos. So balancing these factors, the court found that Ditto's use, this intermediate copying for use of orchestrating a search engine and displaying search results, was in fact fair use. So fair use, it's hard to find a definite answer. It often operates in shades of gray because you have to figure out how a court is going to balance these factors. Some people believe that the first and fourth factor, in particular whether your use is transformative and if it doesn't have any major impact on the market of the rights holder, is going to tend to indicate that your use is fair. But if you're in doubt, and if you're an entrepreneur or a startup and you're not in a position to take on any risk or ambiguity as to whether your use of someone else's rights is fair, then it's best to seek authorization from the rights holder or look for content that's available through an open source or Creative Commons license or otherwise in the public domain. And that's a very general overview of the topic of fair use for copyright.